Good morning, all. Thank you for joining us today on our post-COVID travel survey results call. Please be sure that your microphones are turned off or on mute. And please go ahead and put any comments and questions that you have in the chat. My name is Kristen, I'm with IGLTA. And I'd like to introduce you all to Tom Nichols. He's our co-treasurer on our foundation board. And take it away, Tom.
Great, thanks, Kristen. Hi, everybody. It's really great to join you here today on behalf of the Foundation Board of Directors of IGLTA. As many of you might know, the foundation was created in 2013 and works through leadership, research, and education to support IGLTA and the global LGBTQ plus travel and tourism industry. One of those pillars is research. And so today, what we're doing is presenting the research from the 2021 LGBTQ post-COVID travel survey. And so I'd like to, before I turn it over to Loanne, make a plug for Voyage that is coming up at the upcoming Atlanta convention. And so you can go to the website and be able to support the work of the foundation in its research, education, and leadership by picking up a Voyage ticket. Even if you can't attend, it would be really helpful. So John Tanzella will not fire me from this job because I put in a plug for Voyage. And with that, over to you, Loanne.
Thanks very much, Tom. I'm Loanne Holden, VP of Communications for IGLTA, and I also support the foundation in my role. And I have to say that one of the most frequently asked questions that I get from media around the world is about LGBTQ plus travel data. So some of you may know that we released a survey last year around this time in 2020. And at that point, we were really at the very beginning of the pandemic. And we thought, oh, sure, we'll be right back to travel in a few months, but let's see what our community is thinking about it. And what they were thinking is that they really did want to get back to travel as soon as possible. The desire to get back out into the world was really strong. Unfortunately, it hasn't happened as quickly as most of us would like, but we wanted to come back a year later and see where things stand now with LGBTQ plus travelers, because we know now that a lot of our member businesses and a lot of destinations around the world are really working on their tourism reopening strategies. And so we really want to make sure that LGBTQ plus travel is considered in that mix, because this is a loyal and resilient market, and there's so much value in inclusion. And by showing you these numbers and showing you how much desire there is for our community to be out there, it gives you information that you can take back to your companies. If you have bosses that you report to that might not think that this is an important market, then here are numbers that will say differently. So without further ado, I'm going to quickly, or maybe not so quickly, run through our survey results. This survey was fielded from between March 26th and April 9th through our global network. The responses came from 6,324 individuals around the world. For those of you that did see our last survey, we had about 15,000 respondents to the last one, but that was fielded over the course of a month. We condensed this time frame to 2 weeks because we wanted to move this forward faster. And we found also that over time, fewer responses came in the later part of the survey. And we found when we were looking at other travel surveys that were out in the market, they were in much narrower timeframes. So it made it easier for us to benchmark our data against other surveys if we conducted it in a narrower window. The largest representation in our survey came from the United States, Brazil, Mexico, the EU, and India. As we go through this, you can reference all of the PowerPoints for the full surveys on our website, on the IGLTA research page, and you will see them we have the Brazil survey in Spanish and English, We have a breakout survey on Mexico in Spanish and, Portuguese and English. Our Mexico survey is in Spanish and English. We also have the global results. We have an EU snapshot. We have our United States breakout survey. And we're also adding some translations in French for EU, and we'll continue to add translations across all of them as they come in. What you will not see on the website at the moment is the breakout data for India, because shortly after we released the survey into the field, as most of you know, the situation with COVID in India became extremely dire, and we didn't feel it was appropriate to make a big discussion about the travel survey at this point. Hopefully, as things change and the situation starts to improve, we will have an opportunity to talk a little bit about our findings from India. The other thing that I want to point out about the survey this time around versus last time is if you look at the demographic breakdown, you'll see that 57% of the respondents identified as gay, 19% as lesbian, 17% as bisexual. 63% of the respondents are men, 31% are women, 1% transgender, 4% identify as non-binary or prefer to self-describe. And what's significant about that is representation beyond gay men has always been a challenge whenever we're collecting data on our community. So while the global data still is heavier male, you'll also see that we do have much more gender equity this time around. And if you look at the breakout surveys, particularly if you look at Mexico and Brazil, you'll see that we actually got really close to half and half in our responses. Now, where we're still really needing to make more effort, obviously, is getting documentation from transgender and non-binary respondents. But that's one of the reasons that the IGLTA Foundation is now working on establishing a transgender advisory group. We have onboarded a few members so far, and we're continuing to seek out participants in that. So if there's someone listening that would like to be involved, please do send us a message. You can reach out to us just at iglta@iglta.org, or Kristen will put email contacts in the chat for the foundation as well. But we really want to get more engagement and help not only our internal network, but all of our members to better be able to connect with transgender and non-binary travelers in the community. This just shows the breakout in nice color-coded graphs about our demographic profile. Most of our respondents, as you'll see, hit a sweet spot between the ages of 25 and 64. So these are definitely a large segment of ages that would be considered prime for travel. But we get into the really exciting stuff, which is, when do you plan to take your next major vacation? 73% of our global respondents said they plan to take their next major vacation before the end of 2021. And I don't think there's any denying that this is really exciting news. The one thing that was different from the last time we saw, everyone kind of thought travel would open up in a few months. So everyone said they were planning on taking their next vacation in September, because that seemed like the most likely time that it would be possible. Here you really see it spread out evenly throughout the year as far as when people think they might take that vacation. It was pretty consistent across all of our survey groups. With Brazil actually was really heavy for December, but otherwise May to July, August, basically summertime for the Northern Hemisphere, not surprising. US, EU, and Mexico all said that's when they're ready to hit the road. Flights. This seemed to be the thing that still we can see a trend toward domestic travel. So short haul flights, 3 hours or less, 50% say they're likely or very likely to take a flight within the next 6 months. And then you see it declines with medium haul flights of 3 to 6 hours, and then long haul 6 hours or more. But these numbers are still increasing substantially from where we were a year ago. And I think that the short haul flight, 50%, is particularly significant because we are really seeing the desire to not just drive someplace, but to actually get on a plane. And this continues over the next couple of slides with likelihood breakdowns for activities, again, over the next 6 months. Hotel and resort, stay in a vacation home and condo, domestic leisure trip, and international leisure trip. So again, you're seeing really high numbers on stay in a hotel and resort, and also vacation home and condo, and domestic leisure trips are factoring really high in the mix. You know, again, not surprising because we still have so many restrictions with border openings. It's still very challenging, obviously, to take an international trip, although you can see that the desire is there. Group activities, so whether it's a group trip, a cruise, or visiting an amusement park where there are a lot of people, you can see that those numbers still are trending lower. However, what's really interesting about that is if you look at attend a Pride event or LGBTQ plus festival, that came in at 43%. And that was pretty consistent across all markets, although for Brazil, that was even higher. I believe it was closer to 58%. So I think what that really demonstrates is the desire for the LGBTQ plus community to reconnect. Traveling for us is about, you know, getting out on the road and meeting with like-minded people. For so many people in this survey, whether it's because of cultural reasons, family reasons, the governmental reasons, they're not able to be as open as they would like where they live. And so travel becomes a way of opening doors and expanding horizons. And a big part of that, as we have seen in previous research that we've done, is about attending community-driven events like Prides and LGBTQ festivals where they can all be together, where we can all be together. So I think that will continue to be a significant trend moving forward. This one we're going to flip a little bit, because if you look at the global PowerPoint that's available on the research page, you'll see the data for the overall respondents, which recent travel bookings was 23%, and do you have a passport was about 80%. But we wanted to specifically share the slide related to the US data because we had specific comparisons for this. So right now in the US, just 42% of US citizens have a passport, according to the US Department of State, whereas 85% of our US LGBTQ plus respondents currently have a passport. So again, I think it's really important to note things like this because it's indicative of the desire and the ability that our community has to get out there in the world. The slide or the section on the right that says recent travel bookings, this was actually compared to a survey that Destination Analysts did in the US market. And they were looking at groups of about 1,200 travelers in the US. And their survey was fielded just before ours went out. And at the time, 15.8 of their respondents said they had made a travel booking in the last week at the point at which they took the survey. And so we asked the same question of our respondents, and the US LGBTQ travelers, 29.5% had made a travel booking just in the last week at the time we sent out the survey. I mean, that's an enormous number of travel bookings. So it's great to say that people have the desire to travel, they're likely to travel, but this is also documenting that they're making the bookings, that they are getting out there and doing it. This one is also a US benchmark. We are fortunate enough to have a wonderful foundation board member who is head of travel for Google, and Dougal from Google, because you have to always say it that way, Dougal from Google. Dougal McKenzie shared with me just this week some recent snapshots from their Google surveys. And so this was really interesting, even though it wasn't an exact benchmark. When you look at the time frames, which were similar to when we had our survey in the field, and compare it to how they asked their question, if you look at the domestic travel side, most of their respondents in the US said they were uncertain about taking their next trip. But the largest amounts of responses came in for domestic travel, 24% within the next 3 months, 17% in the next 3 to 6 months, and 9% in the next 6 to 9 months. Whereas the results of our respondents who identify as LGBTQ+, said in the next 6 months, 75% of them said they're planning to travel domestically. I mean, this is a massive difference. And the same thing on the international side, even though we see that international travel obviously is taking longer to rebound than domestically, in the travelers at large surveys, they were saying it's going to be a year from now that they're thinking they'll take an international trip. 16% said a year from now. 11% said maybe in 9 to 12 months. Whereas 28% of the LGBTQ+ respondents said they are ready to take an international trip in the next 6 months. And they are likely or very likely to do so. And again, in the same survey, a large majority of the respondents don't factor into a timeline at all because they said they really didn't know. So they didn't answer definitively. So again, our travelers seem much more convinced. They are ready to get out there, and it's going to happen as soon as protocols and border restrictions will allow. There's another bit of data that actually came in from Google that's not in the slide because it literally came into me today. And it was another snapshot taken just as our survey was closed of US travelers. And it actually said that the likelihood of traveling in the next 3 months, 54% of their respondents said it was very unlikely that they would do so. So again, these are all just ways of emphasizing that when you look at the LGBTQ+ travel market, this is an incredibly resilient market, and they are very loyal to businesses and destinations that make them feel genuinely and authentically welcomed. And we're actually going to do another IGLTA Members Connect in July that will actually focus specifically on LGBTQ+ marketing and how to reach this valuable segment. Oops. This is just a quick thank you to our members and partners who helped to promote and distribute this survey. They're very active and engaged IGLTA partners all around the world. And then this is just our keep in touch slide, because of course we always want to hear from you, and we certainly want to answer questions and discuss the survey in more detail. If there's anything you want to know, you can certainly ask it now or reach out to us at any time. And we're going to continue to share more information about the survey as we move toward the IGLTA Annual Global Convention in Atlanta in September, because we actually ask a couple of questions in the survey. If there are members listening who took it and they're wondering why the responses are not included in the slides here, we had a question really related to traveler values, how they were currently feeling post-pandemic about the importance of mental health and physical health, how they were feeling about gender equity and racial equality. And then we also asked another question about how they wanted to travel moving forward from the pandemic, and really looking at sustainability, at supporting small businesses, at supporting LGBTQ plus businesses. And so we wanted to gauge the sentiments around how our community of travelers was thinking about how we could return to travel in a better way, to build back better, to use the phrase that's been quite frequently thrown about. But it's something that we're going to be fleshing out through the IGLTA Foundation, and we'll be presenting more about that in Atlanta, September 8th through 11th. So of course, we hope that you'll be able to join us there. Thank you.
Sorry about that, I was muted. Thanks to everyone for joining us. And if anyone has any questions, you can put them in the chat, or you can email us at the email address I just put in the chat, and we'll get those answered. Well, if that's all, we can go ahead and end the recording. Thank you all for attending.
Thanks.
Thank you.